Hey everyone, so today I want to talk about a website that I've been using for the last few weeks, and as you've probably guessed from the thumbnail, that website is iTalki. And I want to talk about the pros and cons for me personally, because I know there are a lot of reviews out there, but this is more about how I've found it in the last few weeks after being quite critical on it before I used it. The first pro I want to talk about is just how cheap it is to have a one-on-one class with a native speaker. Yes, there are two different categories of teacher, I suppose, with the professional teacher actually having to have a qualification in teaching that language, whereas the community teachers are just pretty much anyone who makes an account because it's their native language or because they're already fluent in it. There are reasons to pick the professional teacher over the community teacher and vice versa, the main one being cost for the community teacher, but I'll talk about that more in the cons. Because there's these two categories of teachers, the price can differ so much. It can go from like $8 all the way up to $50, $60 an hour. But you can adjust your settings to take the price way down when you're searching for teachers, and I do this all the time. I just go for the cheapest teachers that I can find, and it's been really great so far. Price hasn't reflected a community teacher being better than another one. I think the main difference is professional teachers versus community teachers, and then in those two categories, the difference between other people in those categories I feel like isn't that big. The next pro is they have an insane collection of languages you can choose from. It's crazy. I think there's hundreds, ranging from different dialects of a particular language all the way down to, just the really general languages like French, Spanish, all that kind of stuff. There's just such a massive array of languages, and languages that I've never even heard of before. So I feel like you wouldn't have an issue trying to find your language that you're trying to learn if it's not one of the more popular languages. Aside from there being just so many languages to choose from, it's also really flexible. You can pretty much book a class a day before if you want it with anyone. And this flexibility is great if you just want to get a class ASAP, or in my case, I haven't actually missed a class, but there was a point where I had to move my class back half an hour, and they didn't mind at all. So the teachers seem to be very flexible, and the hours quite flexible as well. Another pro that I've found is the videoing system on iTalki is actually pretty good. I haven't had any issues, which is great that they've managed to build their own videoing system instead of using Zoom, which takes you to an external interface. So I really like that it's all in one website and you don't have to move on to something else. And my last pro is that I feel like on iTalki, especially with the community teachers, you are supporting people who have gone on to iTalki because maybe they've lost their jobs or something bad has happened due to COVID. So there are a lot of people who I think have joined because their life kind of got put on hold and they just want to make some money by chatting to a foreigner in their native language. So I really do feel like if you do use iTalki, you are helping out people who might be struggling right now. Okay, enough about the pros, and let's get into the juicy stuff, the cons. And there are actually quite a few cons, but we'll see if the pros outweigh the cons at the end. Now, the first con is that you have to pay in USD, which is so annoying and just inconvenient, especially during COVID, where I'm not sure about your currency, but the Australian dollar is like doing one of those ones. So it's really inconvenient to select, whatever class you want, $50, $20, and then you go into paying for it, and then it just calculates. It does the currency conversion as you're paying, so it's really dependent on where your dollar's at, and I find it a bit strange that systems are still having only one currency that you can pay with. Even Lingoda, there was only 3 currencies that you can pay with. Yeah, hopefully they allow different currencies soon and we're not stuck on having to pay whatever our dollar is worth against the American dollar. Maybe as they grow bigger it will change, but I think it's weird because for a fact there's people from all over the world paying in American. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, con number 2 is that you get 3 trial classes, and 3 trial classes is just not enough. It took me about 6 or 7 classes to find 2 teachers that I actually liked. And it's a difficult process. There might be some teachers that you don't like, and there'll be some teachers that you do like, and 3 trial lessons is really just not enough. And I'm hoping that they eventually do give people more, because it's in their best interest essentially, because if you find a teacher that you like, or a few teachers that you like, then you're more likely to stay on the system. I know that's probably why they have the 3 trials now, but I think they should increase it. Speaking on how many teachers you should have, I have 2 teachers that I use consistently, and that's simply because if one's not available, then I can just use the other one. And I think this is a really good tactic, because you're going to struggle to find someone who's really good that you can just slot in the time that you want every single day with that one teacher. And if you do want to pick 2 different teachers, my advice for you would be to pick teachers that are very different from each other, but also quite outgoing, so that they make you talk a lot. And what I mean by this is I have 1 male and 1 female teacher, and I have one teacher that the female teacher has a very Parisian accent, she's from Paris, and the male has more of like a southern French accent, but also quite neutral. And my tactic with this essentially is that I want to hear as many different accents as I possibly can. So I personally think it's good to like test yourself and just get different types of accents in. Then you get the full range of different accents, and you'll probably be able to understand a bit better if you are talking to different types of French people, or not everyone has the same accent. Moving into some of the more annoying and bigger flaws of iTalki is one thing that they really need to incorporate, and I'm hoping they incorporate it in the future, is a way for teachers who can't take on new students, so teachers that already have lots of students, to block off any new students from booking. Basically what's happened with me, and I'm sure it's quite common, is that a teacher has to keep open their availability for their current students to pick classes, but new students will come along and pick classes expecting that they are available, when then the teachers turn around and say, okay, no, I can't accept any new students because I already have so many students. I think that they just need to add a feature where if the teacher doesn't want any students who haven't had a lesson with them before to apply for classes, will just not be able to apply. The next con, and this one is so annoying, is that the reviews that you give of the teacher aren't anonymous, so no one's actually going to tell the truth. And this became more apparent when I saw that literally everyone on iTalki has 5 stars. I'm like, wow, everyone must be really good. And no, it's because once you finish the lesson, you have to review them, 1 out of 5 stars, you can leave a comment, and that instantly notifies them, and they can see what you've rated them straight after you had the class. And I just find that no one's actually going to tell the truth. There's been a few times where I've been guilty of this. The teacher probably should have gotten a 3 stars from me, but I just gave them a 5 anyway, because I'm like, oh, yeah, it really needs to be anonymous, or at least an option for it to be anonymous, because no one's actually going to tell the truth if it's not anonymous. In saying that, take all the reviews with a grain of salt, because they might not be 100% accurate. Another con, and I really don't want to hate on community teachers, because like I said before, I feel like they're trying to make some money in these hard times, but that is that they're not always super consistent. And this makes sense, right? Because a lot of the time it's people doing uni and then making some money on the side on iTalki by just chatting to people in their native language. And that makes it difficult if you want a consistent time each week, or maybe each day, or each fortnight, and they just don't have the availability for you, or maybe they cancel. Or another time I had a class with this guy, just one, and after a week he discontinued his account. So it's like he started and he was like, okay, yeah, I want to make some cash, and then he was like, okay, no. And then I just wasted a class trying to see if I like this teacher, and then he just kind of scooted out of there. So that's another thing to consider. One way to avoid this obviously is see if they've had classes before, and if they've had 50-60 classes, then I think that's good enough to have a good idea if they're actually going to stay on the platform. And also if they have had, you can see if they've had classes in the last month or 2 months, check that out to see if they've actually been on recently, and you can make sure that they are going to be on in the future and not just leave the system. The last con, and this kind of ties into how we have to pay in USD, is the credit system on iTalki. So instead of just paying for the class, there's this credit system where you can buy credits, which essentially means buy credits in a USD. This might be good if your currency is going well against the American dollar, and then you can just buy a whole bunch of credits at once. But I mean, it all seems a bit complicated, and really, if they just added in more currencies, I don't know how hard it is to do that, maybe it's too hard, then we wouldn't really need this kind of convoluted credit system that I don't think anyone uses. It just adds this extra step, I feel like, which I'm not a fan of. The last thing, and I left this till last because it's a pro and a con in my opinion, is that you get to decide all the content that you learn and how you want the classes to go. Obviously, this is a great pro if you know exactly what you want to focus on, exactly where you need to focus your efforts, but a lot of the time as a beginner, you don't know where you're at and what is supposed to be next in your language learning journey. In that regard, it might be a bit difficult if you're not sure what you want to focus on. It's easy with community teachers because you just practice, general conversation speaking, and that obviously helps your speaking, listening, and vocab. But if you want to do more with grammar, with professional teachers, it can be difficult if you're not sure what areas you're supposed to be focusing on. And on the other hand, this can obviously be a big pro if you do know exactly what you want to focus on, you know what you're struggling with, and you can straight up ask the teacher to help you with this, this, and this, and then the lesson is completely made for you. Whether it's a pro or a con is really up to you. All in all, there are a lot of cons, but I feel like they don't take away from the core experience, which is just chatting to someone in the native language that you're practicing. And that is really, really valuable because you can use all the vocab that you've been learning. And considering it's so cheap, imagine if you just did 1 hour conversation practice every couple of days. That's a lot. You're going to progress really fast and learn a lot of just small things that you can hear people say in their native language in a more comfortable conversation and not in a classroom type of vibe. For example, lots of slang or filler words that you don't really hear in proper classrooms because all the words and sentences in classrooms are properly structured to teach you the grammar, but it's not really how it is in real spoken French, you know what I mean? Or another language. The interesting thing that I'm going to be doing with iTalki is I'm going to be attempting to do an intensive with a teacher that I have a class with every single day for 3 weeks. So the 3 weeks before France, I just want to hammer in as much French as I possibly can. And I get conflicting arguments with this. I have some people telling me don't worry about learning any French before you go because you'll become fluent as soon as you arrive there. And then there's other people saying learn as much as you can so that when you arrive you're not overwhelmed and just hate it at the start. I'm also agree with the latter. I really just want to learn as much as I can and make it easier on my future self. For those who don't know, I'm over 2 months into my Lingoda intensive. I haven't missed a class yet, fingers crossed. Considering how much I've progressed doing 1 hour class a day for 2 months, I've progressed so much. I just want to essentially double that for the next 3 weeks and really progress in French as much as possible. I will be making a video about my plans for this intensive, the iTalki intensive. My teacher has actually been really great. She's come up with a plan for me. I told her about what I want to improve in, and she's literally written up a day-to-day plan for each of our classes and what homework she wants to give me after each class. So I'll show you guys that as well, and all of the other planning that is going into the intensive. I'm really excited to share that with you guys, and it should be really fun, really intense, but really fun. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. That brings us to the end of the video. If you do want to try out iTalki, they have this thing where if you refer a friend, both of you get $10 USD. I'll put my link in the description, so if you do want to join, just click on that and we'll both get $10. Alright, thanks for watching and let me know what you think of the pros and cons, if it's worth it, and I'll see you in my next video.